Do I love Blackjack? That's an oddly personal question. I'm not sure how to answer. Yes would suffice, but it really wouldn't explain much, would it? I suppose what you're really asking is, why do I love Blackjack? When Blackjack is at her best, she's like Pony Kind at its best. I really believe there's nothing she can't accomplish when she's like that. It's almost scary just what she can get done when she puts her mind to it. She tracked down Dusk, fought a whole slew of Red-Eye soldiers, and brought her back to help me. And it worked! I don't think Dusk and I have ever talked like we did when she saw my injury. And that's why, when she talks about saving Hoofington and Equestria, I think she might be able to do it. At the same time, I'm scared of her. I'm scared of what she'll do, what she can do. She killed
There's trying hard, there's trying too hard, there's Are You Kidding Me? And then there's Project Horizons, a spin-off story of Fallout Equestria apparently so hell-bent on becoming the bleakest, most tragic, ultra-violent piece of literature ever written, it makes the original story feel like a trip to Happy-Go-Luckyville. Being Fallout Equestria the fanfiction equivalent of Star Wars in terms of vast larger-than-life lore, settings, struggles and characters in a continuously expanding universe, it was inevitable that many amateur authors, literally hundreds of them, inspired by the grandiosity of this novel would make their own side stories set inside this very creative canvas. The only two official author-approved of which are Fallout Equestria Heroes, which will be analyzed at another time, and Fallout Equestria Project Horizons, a story of undeniable complexity and depth that tries way too hard to feel like a story of undeniable complexity and depth, which, again, it already is. On the surface, the shtick of this diegesis can be summarized in one line. It's as if the original story went Super Saiyan. The regular Equestrian wasteland wasn't bleak enough with its radiation, raiders, and violence? Well, where this story takes place, the zone of Huffington, there are also fields of corrupted magic called enervation that can melt upon his body in minutes depending on the level of exposure, and worst yet, nullify the effect of healing potions, which is just cheap. Also, the raiders up here aren't just sadistic ravaging killers and rapists. No! Thanks to a non-specific brain-rotting disease, now they're also cannibals! You fought the regular wastelanders headed rough with all those slavers and mercenary griffins and mind-controlled alicorns? The core of Uffington itself is apparently the source of all evil in the universe. The whole of this setting can pretty much be described with 3 simple words.
Oh, come on!
In fact, they should just make a postcard out of this. Visit the Huffington Wasteland. We're worse than the regular one. Fools are disemboweled for free. Remember how the story in Fallout Equestria was complex but also relatively smooth to follow thanks to a straightforward, well-paced narrative that makes it easy to remember all the most important points as it progresses on? Project Horizons takes that very story and forcefully glue it to its own by having 200 years worth of sorrow, death, political intrigues and conspiracies all linked together by the doings of one single pony by the name of Goldenblood, whom is now portrayed as the epicenter of everything that went wrong back in the days of the Zebra War, which is a very contrived and slightly annoying plot point in its own right. On one hand, it's fascinating to witness your favorite literary universe grow in depth and complexity as its background expands through the means of side storytelling, but on the other hand, being this a spin-off tale that takes place more or less at the same time of the original diegetic behemoth that began it all, it can easily get out of control and shoot itself in the foot in the long run. As of now, I'm currently at its midpoint. This novel's obsession in being everything its predecessor miraculously was, only 10 times better and bleaker, while arrogant, it's not necessarily a flaw if the author has the sheer talent to back up this ridiculously ambitious goal with strong writing and characters. In that regard, I am very pleased, and also a bit shaken, to report that the Project Horizons characters are some of the most messed up, complicated, multi-layered, sympathetic and tragically human characters I've ever fumbled upon. Never mind the fact that they're actually cartoon equins, which is ironic considering they were the product of the author's "let's try way too hard to surpass the greatest novel of this generation" philosophy. What made the protagonist of Fallout Equestria brilliant in the first place was the carefully crafted brick-building process of their personality and personal struggles out of very familiar and immediately recognizable archetypes. Said basic archetypes made them easily to identify at a first glance, thus allowing us to quickly sympathize with them and their struggles as the more complex facets of their personality emerge within their own development. For example, Calamity is the easygoing type, Steelhooves is the stoic type with a brooding past, and Velvet Remedy is basically a cross between Fluttershy and Rarity. Again, timeless personality templates that are easily identifiable, like in most works of fiction. The peculiarity about the characters from Project Horizons, however, is that they seem to lack identifiable templates, or at least quickly recognizable ones. They come off with enough emotional and psychological ambiguity and multifaceted turmoil that they seem to openly defy a clear-cut identification in any of the available archetypes, which is a rare occurrence but not completely unheard of. How would you define within the parameters of a predefined model a homosexual character that has lived all of his life as a breeding tool for the mares of his stable and is now traveling the wastelands with the one pony who raped him first?
Awkward.
You could probably throw in some witty comment about misogyny or the irony of it all, but this is addressed as a genuine tragedy for everyone involved. B21, that's his name, wants to forget about his past, but cannot let it go because his companion, whom is the main heroine by the way, keeps reminding him of that life with her very presence, and he feels even worse when she drowns herself in guilt and proactively destroys herself. He loves her and hates her at the same time. He wants to help her, but he feels impotent to do so, and he hates himself for not being able to shed that part of him that links his friend to those awful memories. This is only one of the many, many complicated relationships available in this story. And speaking of complicated, meet Rampage, a red-striped, drug-addicted immortal pony with a split personality and a thirst for blood that cannot be killed in any way possible. She's also a child murderer. She's one of the protagonists.
Huh? What?
I tremble of the thought that I will have to cover Lacuna, Deus, and Psycho-Shy at some point. But as utterly, bafflingly messed up any of these characters are, they all pale in comparison to the main heroine herself. At first glance, you might think Blackjack here is basically Little Peep with a different color scheme, and she does have a lot in common with the best female protagonist in contemporary fiction, but there are a lot of both subtle and overwhelmingly sad differences between the two. Little Peep's arc is a spin on the classic hero's journey narrative with an epic twist, looking out for her virtue and position in a world that badly needs heroes. Blackjack's path is as every bit as unclear and depressing as it could possibly get, constantly in search of a personal redemption that seems to elude her at any given chance, half the time because of her own self-loathing. She led all her life inside a male rape factory, only to escape outside after a break-in from raiders along with one of those aforementioned males, B21.
Awkward.
Realizing how horrible that place really was once her perception of normalcy changed dramatically is only the peak of her guilt-crusted iceberg. Her mistakes indirectly caused the death of hundreds. The consequences of her actions blow in her face, sometimes literally, and whatever solace her friends try to instill in her, she still feels like she doesn't deserve any of it. She gets in a codependent relationship with Glory, a Pegasus that was betrayed and shunned by her own people and lost everything in the process. Blackjack's inability to appreciate the simple joy in front of all the horror causes pain to Glory, which in turn transmutes into yet more guilt for her. Then she starts being angsty about being angsty, instead of trying and do better for everyone else. Then she tries to be selfless, to do better and save lives to the point of maiming herself or worse, thus making all her companions worry for her, because she can't appreciate the fact that they would be completely lost without her, which, in contrast, makes her completely egotistical and self-centered. That's the great thing about Blackjack as a main heroine. She's a rare case of an angsty, self-loathing, almost nihilistic character done right, because that's not all there is to her. She tries so hard, so desperately to do what she thinks is the right thing, only to screw up in some way because of her fear of screwing up, unable to see all the good that she causes in the process. She often tries to mask her depression with easygoing facades and tough acts, and she genuinely loves her friends, especially Glory, whose presence is the only wall between her togetherness and her complete suicide-inducing insanity, at least until she comes back home later on. She's an emotional train wreck, in other words, a train wreck that fights off super-powered cybernetic rapists that can't survive dismemberment and being squashed by a boat. Twice. For the most part, the story provides deep character explorations through pitch-black tragedies, horrors beyond imagination, and the occasional, most appreciated light-hearted moments, balanced out with a solid, albeit contrived narrative progression and genuine bits of pure action-packed awesomeness. Unfortunately, the particularly bleak nature of this opus tends to occasionally get in the way of the narrative and the characters' development themselves because of that whole trying too hard leitmotif. And in the second part of this review, we shall see exactly what is wrong with that. We shall also talk more about its mentally unstable protagonist and get to know the voices inside her head. This has been Madhog, and you've been listening to...
Oh, they should've just sent the whiskey when they saw the trouble coming. Oh, they should've just sent the whiskey, then there wouldn't be a running. The times are tough and things are bad, so why be dumb and risky? When you see the trouble come, you better just send the whiskey. Now I hear the wine is mighty fine, but it makes you feel so frisky. But the troubles come, so get it done, and don't forget the whiskey.
So, do I love her? Yes. But will I always be able to be there for her? I don't know.
Do I like Blackjack? Are you serious? Really? Fine. No, I don't like Blackjack. Because every second I'm around her, I'm reminded of a place that hurt me. Because every time I think I'm over it, she does something to remind me of how much it sucked. She's a walking, talking reminder of everything that I hate. Sometimes, I don't think I'll ever be over it till she's dead. But no matter how much she hurts me, I know it's nothing compared to how much she hurts herself. She seems to have this masochistic need to suffer for simply surviving. She runs on guilt and angst, and one day she's going to choke on it. And I hate it because there's nothing I can do to stop it. She's like an addict hooked on martyrdom. She'll sacrifice her body, happiness, sanity, and life trying to help others even if they don't deserve it. And she'll beat herself miserable when she fails. How can you like a person like that? How can you love a person like that? No more stupid questions.
When you get past all the twists and turns, universe-building lore, informational baggage, and the very well-written action sequences, Project Horizons is, at its core, a characters piece. To be specific, it's a first-person narrative that provides a deep deconstruction of its leading heroine's psychology throughout her many layers of complex emotional abuse and self-abuse, ranging from her many traumas, the way she deals with said traumas, her ever-growing need of redemption in a desperate attempt to escape her angst and guilt, and her hardcore masochism as a result of that, among many other things. The author does an impeccable job in exploring her personality, her relationships with her friends, and, subsequently, her friends' personality and their intertwining relationships with one another as perceived from her eyes and mind. This style of introspective narrative is conveyed through the clever use of both verbal and silent exchanges between characters, strong dreamlike metaphors representing Blackjack's struggle, and, obviously, the various observations and tribulations from the protagonist herself, which is the whole point of adopting a first-person narrative style to begin with. This diegetic choice, which is more often applied to artistic pieces rather than epic sci-fi/fantasy storytelling, in the hands of the right author, proves to be a perfect vehicle to illustrate the complexity of a fictional persona that eludes the basic archetypical definitions. In that regard, Project Horizons might be the best characters piece of its category. Too bad it also wants to have a ridiculously contrived plot that involves way too many secret projects, conspiracies, political intrigues, and super-powered mutants that would make the X-Men go derpy hooves. Actually, that's not a flaw at all. That's all kinds of interesting. And if this was a lesser novel, then all the various transitions between action sequences involving equine manticore hybrids and the pony equivalent of Missplosion Man, the story progression, and the sheer mental anguish of Blackjack would have been awkward and harmful to a higher focus. As it stands, none of them hurts the seemingly perfect pacing and structural solidity of the story as a whole. What does hurt the very foundation of the Fallout Equestria universe itself in many subtle ways is the previously mentioned presence of this Golden Blood fellow as the epicenter of every single conspiracy and political intrigue during the Great Zebra War. Now, in the original novel, the reason why everything went boom was because the main six were separated from one another, locked themselves in their own individual ministries and projects trying to win the war, thus losing sight of what was really important: friendship! The world was destroyed because friendship failed, which is a refreshingly straightforward yet deeply explored theme that makes perfect sense with everything we know and understand about this universe. That's why, by simply implying that the apocalypse might have been the result of a series of overcomplicated subterfuges went horribly wrong because of the mistakes of one single unicorn, said larger-than-life theme falls out of context and gets completely undermined. All because the author was trying too hard to surpass the original story with more complicated background info, even though what made the original story so great in the first place was the underlying, simple immediateness of its message and the way it was conveyed through the characters' both personal and physical journey. And speaking of characters' journey, the biggest flaw in Project Horizons lies also in the author's biggest strength. He is very good in exploring his characters, but is not just as good in developing them once their inner struggles have been approached and expanded upon, choosing instead to add more and more misery to their lives, which fairly often ends up reprising and recycling the same reasons why they were suffering to begin with. Let's compare Little Pip's journey with Blackjack's to form an example. In the former's case, whenever a tragic, life-changing event occurs, it serves the purpose of developing the main character in some way or the other, occasionally halting her progression to give her a moment's pause and reflect about everything that's going utterly and horribly wrong, both around her and within her. Then her character eventually has to face her ultimate brutal test in chapter 34, which is one of the most defining moments of her growth. By overcoming this obstacle, she develops into a stronger heroine. The key to the success of this formula is balance. Tragedies and the such like only occur when they are useful to specific aspects of the story and or to the character's growth within her arc. That's not exactly the case for Blackjack. By the time her story reaches chapter 34, she's already gone through disembowelment, dismemberment, head traumas, hysteria, psychological breakdown, killing sprees, post-traumatic disorders, heavy radiation and enervation poisoning, mourning over a mania pony's death, schizophrenia, betrayal, extreme mayhem, suffocation, and not one but 2 suicide attempts in the span of 1 chapter. Aside from 3 or 4 important events, including her tearful emotional reunion with P21 and her return to her own stable, of the time all these painful occurrences served the point of making Blackjack feel angsty and self-loathing for not being able to save ponies, or even monster ponies for that matter, for screwing up in some epic way or for slowly turning into a monster herself, which becomes redundant. When both the physical and psychological destruction of a character doesn't serve a purpose other than making her feel bad for virtually the same point over and over again, it stops being a compelling and tragic narrative and it starts being plain old torture.
You've got opportunity in your very community. East Wales Flam, we're the world famous Flim Flam brothers. Traveling sales, ponies on parade. Flam, have you heard of magical radiation?
Luna, no, brother. What's magical radiation?
Well, magical radiation, measured in rads, you see, is a naturally occurring phenomena in which trace amounts of magical energy are radiated from powerful magical sources. The larger these sources, the more magical radiation is given off. Normally, small amounts of magical radiation don't affect us, but with exposure to magical radiation from larger sources, like mega spells or state-of-the-art new spell reactor technology, your body will be chock full of rads lickety-split.
Huh? You need me?
Not now, lickety-split.
Interns, right?
With zebras now in possession of mega spells, the chance of an enemy balefire is at an all-time high. What happens when you suck up all those rads from that mega spell radiation?
Bad things, brother.
That's right. Mega spell radiation can cause stallion pattern baldness, growth of additional limbs and or orifices, horrible mutations, and even death.
My, that's a lot of bad things, brother. Sounds like these folks are in a bit of a bind.
A bind indeed. Fortunately, we are here today to offer the solution to all your rad-related problems. Introducing the new super stupendous, wonderfully amazing new product sweeping the nation. Radaway! With this wonderful product, you can kiss magical radiation goodbye. Scientifically tested, this patented technology is Ministry of Peace approved, proven to remove the effects of magical radiation faster than you can say Twilight Sparkle.
And is the only product proven to guarantee survival in the event of a zebra megaspell raid. But that's not all.
Not by a long shot, brother. Radaway now also comes in a tangy orange flavor.
So take this opportunity in your very community. East
Flam, we're the world famous Flim Flam brothers. Traveling sales, ponies, non-parade. Also by Radix for all your magical radiation anticipatory needs.
With that said, I cannot stress enough how decisively good are the various bits of genuine and subtle development happening when the characters try to deal with everything going on and start to genuinely rely on each other, the bits of exploration in which the author is at his strongest. In that regard, Blackjack and Glory's almost desperate attachment to one another oozes with heart and comfort, and the sex provides Blackjack with a psychological anchor for her overly compromised sanity. If you feel like drawing a line of comparison between Glory Jack and Homage Pip, by all means be my guest. And considering that at some point she starts hallucinating about an old ghostly card dealer that tells her all about the many ways she's going to fail, She kind of already lost her mind somewhere between the first slaughtered filly and her most inglorious homecoming. Next time, we shall take a look at the remaining cast, the story, and hopefully conclude this now 3-part review. This has been Madhog, and you've been suffering through Fanfiction R&R. And now, my top 3 characters by the name of Blackjack. Number 3, Blackjack. Number 2, Blackjack. Number 1, Blackjack. Yay!
Some roads are straight and narrow, some paths are high and steep. Some ways are slow and heavy, some tracks are dark and deep. But this trail I follow, no matter where it leads. I know I'll never wander, as long as I heed. No matter where or when it goes, I'll walk it without fail. Because I know no matter what my burden cannot trail. My load is mine to carry along, I packed it all myself. I chose what to leave behind on that old and dusty shelf.
There's an interesting peculiarity about the game of Blackjack. Unlike other card games, the player or players don't compete against each other but rather against the dealer. It could be surmised that Blackjack serves as a metaphorical representation of life itself, specifically the never-ending struggle between man and fate, with the dealer symbolizing the unknown, the uncertainty of a player's future, God and destiny, and the cards it deals to said player represent what's at stake, either failure or success, a chance to keep going or to lose everything, the odds by which one's path is decided. Life is a constant gamble with fate. This interpretation of the popular casino game serves as a recurring leitmotif in Project Horizons, and not just because the main heroine happened to be named after it. Blackjack's first encounter with the mysterious dealer happens in the context of one of the best card-related metaphorical dream sequences ever constructed, along with this one other you all remember because The Simpsons made fun of it. In her mind, the dealer is the literal ponification of the wasteland itself, and therefore death, which she initially perceives as the source of all her misery and angst, the entity she forces herself to fight against, thus further empowering her sufferance and locking herself in the ever-revolving vicious cycle of her own masochistic path. The cards he deals to her represent what she's putting on the line in her desperate gambit to win redemption, namely the lives of those she could or could not save. This metaphor, along with her card-related cutie mark, and even the red and black colors of her mane for that matter, serve the purpose of subtly illustrate to us what Blackjack's own special talent, destiny, greatest strength and weakness all are. She's a gambler in the game of life and death, constantly fighting against overwhelming odds to secure a victory, suffering in unimaginable ways when she loses, but never actually giving up, even when she wants to give up. She's simply not allowed to give up, partly because of her self-abusing perseverance that leads her to alienate herself from her friends, partly because she gets so addicted to self-loathing she never gives herself a break, and partly because that's her destiny, as the story progression itself seems to suggest. Her unique talent is to persevere no matter the odds, like true gamblers, and her fate is to be locked in the previously mentioned masochistic cycle of her own existence, filled with pain and self-hatred, to literally being deprived of the ability to die, to keep on going without the luxury of simply giving up. All of this brings us to one simple conclusion. Blackjack is a martyr without a comeuppance. She's Jesus Christ constantly resurrecting only to be crucified again. She is the embodiment of sorrow. Or at least that's how she's been defined for the first 33 chapters of this story by all the things the author throws at her, which still don't justify their redundant amount, as I pointed out in the previous video. It seems legit to speculate at this specific point that her arc will have to focus on her somehow growing out of her mostly self-imposed symbolic role while still remaining true to her virtue, thus finally forgiving herself and learn to rely more on her friends. Either that or she finds permanent peace with death. Well, that was a tad depressing. Let's lighten up the mood. Hey, you know how Little Pip gets so adorably bashful when addressing her homosexuality, making her the perfect victim of constant teasing from both Homage and Velvet Remedy? Blackjack completely throws subtlety out the window by being a no-holds-barred, gloriously bisex which makes perfect sense considering the nature of our stable, in which males are nothing but tools for reproduction and occasional fun to be disposed of at some point, and they're otherwise kept separated from all the mares, leaving them to experiment with themselves. If there's one positive thing about Blackjack's upbringing in this nightmarish rape factory, is the fact that she grew up to be a sexually liberated individual, also known as gloriously bisex, which only makes things more awkward when she gets outside with a stallion of her stable, whose own homosexuality has made things especially hard for him. By the way, the game of Blackjack is also known as 21. The name of this character is P21. Anyway, the reason why this stallion and the gloriously bisex are on the run is because she stored some important file in her pip-buck, and she's been chased for it by a crazy, overpowered, female-hating cyber pony by the self-appointed name of Deus Ex Machina. I am not even kidding. Who's working for a mad scientist ghoul by the name of Sanguine. Conspiracies abound, twists turn, questions are questioned, and the plot becomes a bit contrived before too long. New friendships are formed with Morning Glory, Rampage, Lacuna, and P21's unknowing daughter Scotch Tape gets to join too later on to make things all the more uncomfortable. It's funny to notice how the more whole and sensible characters in this group of hopeless psychological screw-ups are the immortal death-reckoning mare with the spiked armor and the alicorn born from all the negative and painful emotions of a goddess. And to explain who Lacuna is in More Death, I would have to explain who the goddess is. And to do that, I would also have to explain what Unity is, and that would spoil one of the most mind-blowing twists of the original story. Suffice to say, it's important to this universe's lore. It's rather charming how a character named Rampage, who has to constantly digest drugs in order not to lose her good mood, who's endured some of the most atrocious things an impossible to kill pony could endure, chapter 22 hint hint, turns out to be the best possible friend one like Blackjack could possibly ask for. She's a good listener, she always knows what to say to cheer ponies up, and she's very fun to be with in general. Unless, of course, one of her many personalities takes over and they have to put her down with either a bullet in the head or through incineration. It's truly fascinating how a story like this manages to find a balance between ludicrously over-the-top characters and the necessary amount of exploration needed to give them actual depth and weight, all the while not being fully able to balance its increasingly contrived plot with set characters and their subsequent evolution. Flaws aside, Project Horizons is still more than capable to give the original story a run for its money. It has better action sequences for once. As of chapter 33, the story, and therefore the main heroine's arc, has reached its darkest and most unsafe turning point yet, and it will be interesting to find out what will happen afterwards. Will the importance of the main six and the ruling princesses be further undermined? Will Blackjack finally enter therapy? Will she join forces with Little Peep for a glorious one-night stand? I'm just kidding. No way that's ever going to happen. I mean, it makes no sense. Just imagine how dumb that would be. It's like the story's believability committing suicide right there and there. Oh boy.
Pony rage resound in the stable underground. What immortal horn hoof frame thy fearful symmetry? In what fallen city or land did your spirit break so grand? How much pain did you endure to protect and life secure? What friends, what love lift your heart from above? When your tears began to fall, what dread sorrow held you enthralled? What the shock and what the flame, in what torment birth the shame, that the rifle, what dread eye guide your bullets as they fly? When your guns and pistols roar, promise doom and death. Today's secret word is